New Gold Order vehicles. What the? In the mood? That sounds sus. Are you guys in the mood? Wait, don't actually answer that. 4 new Gold Order weapons came to the game in the latest edition of the Battlepass Season 9 in April 2023. This is one of the most unique and interesting set of guns we've had, consisting of the first machine gun and sniper Gold Order weapons that have ever been released. In this video we'll review all 4 of them, talking about their interesting histories and their in-game hidden statistics for performance, and whether you should spend your valuable gold weapon orders on them. But even if you don't trust my opinions, then there's a link to Staro's custom mod he made for myself and this video in the description, which houses every single Gold Order weapon, including all the new ones, so you can test them all out for yourself. Let's begin with the W.A.R, or the W.A.R. Definitely not because it has the most awesome name on this list. No, how could you even insinuate such a biased statement? Now, sadly for us all, it actually stands for something and isn't actually named after the events this gun is used in. It is an abbreviated form for Winchester Automatic Rifle, as it was made by Winchester Repeating Arms Company. And guess what? It's an automatic rifle.
What? Nah, I never knew that.
The famous B.A.R, or Browning Light Machine Gun, of which there are many versions in Enlisted already, had a number of known shortcomings during its use in World War II, and the US military was interested to replace it with something better. The W.A.R answered the call, as it was a cheaper, lighter, and more accurate replacement. Just one prototype of this was made in 1945, and it was tested in the summer of that year, and the results from field testing were actually excellent. The only thing that prevented it from becoming mainstream production was the end of the war itself. The budget for new arms development was slashed at this point, yet it cannot be said enough how close the aptly named W.A.R, or W.A.R, was to getting a major contract to replace the B.A.R entirely. So it was indeed a top tier weapon in its time. But what about in game? Well, a high 13.2 base damage and 640 shots per minute is basically the exact same as all the other amazing B.A.Rs, so it's on equal footing so far. Its ever so slightly higher reload speed puts it a bit lower, but since the weapon's history, which was kindly provided by Pavel for all weapons in this video, is reflected pretty accurately in game, and you're about to see why this thing is nutty. It is indeed lighter and significantly more accurate than all other B.A.R models in the game, and using Euthemia's new public enlisted resource document, which has all the stats in the entire game, you can see this exceptionally well in the recoil control multiplier, the actual recoil, and shot dispersion. However, it does need to be mentioned that the W.A.R does suffer from 2 things, which in turn does affect the feel of the recoil. One of these is a recoil direction stat of 0.15. This hidden statistic, which is not viewable in the game itself either, but it dictates which direction the recoil goes to. It seems to be from testing that a higher value makes it go more to the right in terms of horizontal recoil, which can make it more predictable for some, but the overall magnitude of recoil itself feels worse horizontally as a result. Horizontal recoil is worse than vertical to control anyway, so I do see this as a negative stat to have a high value for. And then also there, perhaps more importantly, is the visual recoil multiplier of 2.0, almost a whopping 10 times the value of other B.A.Rs. Now this column just means how much the gun recoils visually, without adding actual recoil, in essence making the recoil feel worse. It can be argued that it could be felt more easily on weapons like the W.A.R with a close and far sight, as the close one moves more, perfectly illustrated as you can see here on screen with a side-by-side comparison of the FG42. That being said, it doesn't really feel bad on W.A.R, not nearly as bad as in the FG video, very surprisingly for the magnitude of the 2.0 value. So this is actually a positive for the weapon, for some reason. And you know what else are positives for the mighty W.A.R? It's better than all the rest aim down sight speed multiplier of 0.75, which just means how quickly you can scope with it, and the fact that it has the lowest movement speed nerfs out of all Western Allied machine guns of just 20%, yet still it's underrated. And did I mention its name before? The W.A.R gets a score of 6.9 out of 10 on my gold weapon leaderboard. All others on this list I've reviewed before, and you can see the playlist of all of them up in the top right corner now. It's better than the Lanchester Model 1 due to lower recoil and higher damage, but just a little worse than the LAD due to worse recoil and lower magazine size. If any of the B.A.Rs kept their rate of fire but had a larger magazine size, then they would all, including the W.A.R, be higher on my list. Next up is the FN Model 1930, the gun in this batch that most people in our 2000 members plus enlisted Discord server seem to believe is the best, and the link to join the debate is in the description. In short, it's another version of the BAR, but a Belgian-made model. I don't think there are any other Belgian-made weapons in the game, so if you are Belgian, then I'm sure this one will suit you.
More than you believe, I'm happy.
You aren't showing it.
I'm so happy, believe me. I'm so happy. Happy New Year.
It was actually allocated the service designation of FN Model D, which isn't mentioned in the in-game details, but the D stands for demountable or removable, as it had a simplified takedown method for field stripping and maintenance. It was produced between 1932, when it was adopted by the Belgian army proper, and 1940, and saw major export success, in particular with China during World War II with the Nationalist Army. And this may be a strenuous reason why it's available for the Pacific Axis campaign right now, before the campaigns will merge. Unlike the W.A.R, it was used after World War II, but instead was chambered for the standard NATO ammunition going forwards. And in the 1950s, it was phased out for the famous FN FAL. I mean, after all, the firearms manufacturer that made it was the famous Fabrique Nationale company, or however you pronounce it, dude. French is difficult for a British man to say, come on, or abbreviated as FN. And in game, well, it's basically as good as the W.A.R, or any BAR. It's better in some areas than them, and worse than others, but it's basically the same weapon once again, for better or worse, depending on whether you were hoping for something a bit more different. The same base damage as all other MGs in the game, but with a decently higher fire rate of 770 shots per minute, the highest fire rate out of all BARs in the game. Now this is finally reaching the sweet spot of around 750 shots per minute, so it's really good. But you know what else is the sweet spot? The subscribe button. We're actually already so close to 10k, and your sub will mean so much to me. It also has a great low reload speed, on par with the other BARs and better than the W.A.R. Yet what it shines in power is countered by its worse recoil control and handling, as it has significantly worse horizontal and vertical recoil than the W.A.R, as well as worse shot dispersion, and it reduces your movement speed by the 25% of most other BARs, 5% more than the W.A.R. Its visual recoil stat seems to be only 1, rather than the 2 of the Winchester MG, but after testing this I still don't really notice any difference, so it's not really a benefit or a downside. Now sure, most of what I just mentioned is only a little bit worse than the W.A.R, but the largest difference is in the recoil, which is over double. Now this worse control can be all made up for, in some people's minds, with the presence of a full auto slow firing mode, something that the W.A.R lacks, even though I disagree that auto slow is good to use, as some other content creators may say, and also this Belgian MG has arguably better sights, if you do prefer sights to be more open. So these are two things to take into consideration. For me personally though, it gets a score of 6.8 out of 10, 0.1 worse than the W.A.R, even though to be honest with you, they both are equally as good, and it's down to your personal preference whether you want lower recoil and shot dispersion, or higher fire rate and lower reload speed. For me though, lower recoil and shot dispersion takes priority, hence my scoring, and definitely not because of the name. Definitely not. You can't keep accusing me of that, like I didn't do anything. Next up is, well, another kind of BAR, but a bit less of a BAR than the W.A.R and the FN. It's the Lahti-Saloranta M26. Now I don't know what it is about Finnish weapons and Finnish names, but even though this thing is worse than the other two weapons we've reviewed so far, I still just like it.
I like it, cut G.
Designed by the legendary Imo Lahti and Arvo Saloranta, which are fantastic names for actual human beings by the way, it was actually a very common weapon, with over 6,200 pieces being built. 1,200 of them are once again exported to China, whose nation seems to love knockoff versions of BARs. I wonder why. Considering where Finland is geographically, it was designed for use in the harshest climatic conditions, and adopted for service by the Finns in 1926. It was made for 20-round box magazines, but also 75-round drum magazines, though the 20 round was more common as it was cheaper to produce, hence why this is the one you see in game. Though I think it would have been more awesome to give it a 75 round mag, and it would have bumped it up my leaderboard considerably. It was deemed a reliable weapon, but was super complicated with over 188 different parts, completely unheard of for weapons at the time. This is the reason why it influenced many Finns to prefer using the Soviet Degtyarev MGs ahead of it, like the DP-27, but I don't care. I'll continue using it on behalf of the Finns on my Twitch streams, and you can join our growing community over there every Wednesday, Friday and Sunday. Yet in game, it's decent, but not amazing. I mean, it does the job of, you know, killing humans, but doesn't help you murder as many people in a short space of time, as some of you homicidal maniacs out there might like. Once again, it does the same base damage with a very good reload speed of just 2 seconds, but it's majorly let down by its rate of fire of only 500 rounds per minute, even slower than the Browning M1918A6, which has 100 rounds per mag. not the 20 the Lahti-Saloranta shares with the W.A.R and the FN. Its shot dispersion is also the worst out of the three so far at 0.35, and has much more vertical recoil, higher than all other BARs. Yet that's perhaps not even the worst thing. Its ADS speed multiplier is only 0.3, which is less than half as quick as all other BARs, and makes it comparable with the heavy German MGs like the MG42 and 34. So it doesn't really have a lot going for it, apart from its firing sound, which is actually unique, and its name, which I still love, dude. Like, come on, Saloranta. I might call my son that. Wait, I'm gonna call his brother W.A.R. One tiny little thing to mention though is that it has a semi-auto firing mode, which none of the other BARs have, which is quite interesting, and means you can treat this almost as a semi-auto rifle if you would like to. The Lahti-Saloranta gets a 6.1 out of 10, which might be higher than you think it deserves considering my criticism, but uniqueness is also taken into account, and you can't deny the Finns have done it again with uniqueness. Even though 6 is not the middle of the 0 to 10 score I give all gold weapons, it feels to me like a middle of the park kind of weapon. What I mean by that is, get it if you like interesting stuff, but not if you're a power-hungry monster. And lastly, we have the SVD-38, whose full designation is the Degtyarev Rifle Model 1938. There was only one prototype of this ever made in 1938, and was tested with the SVT-38, made by the famous Tokarev, and AVS-36, made by Simonov, which are in Enlisted as free campaign weapons anyway. But if you know how good the SVT and AVS are in game, then you might have predicted that this SVD would perform less well than them, which was true in the actual trials, so the SVD wasn't picked for mainstream production. For history buffs watching this video, there was actually a 1932 model of this Degtyarev made, and this 1938 version was supposed to be the improved and lighter form, which it was, but it wasn't as improved as the SVT, which Politburo picked over the AVS as well. In-game, we can compare its power to other rifles, even though it's technically a sniper class weapon in Enlisted. Lucky for you though, you can actually remove the scope if you would like to, as it's detachable. It does the same damage as the SVT, same mag size and even reload speed, even though the SVT-40 beats both in this regard. It also has worse horizontal recoil at the cost of better vertical recoil than all the SVTs. It's not hugely noticeable, but you can feel it to some extent. The SVD only hits the lower end of the ADS speed multiplier too. It doesn't have a bayonet, yet a shot dispersion on par with the other snipers even if you take off the scope, so that is a major benefit. But perhaps the strangest benefit of the SVD over any SVT is that it has less than half the movement dispersion multiplier when hip firing. This essentially means it's the most accurate to fire when not aiming down sight and on the move, which I guess is a thing. I'll give it that. Which can imply the SVD is sneakily designed for those of you who use snipers to attack the point, and I already know that there are many of you out there that do this. Overall, the SVD-38 scores a 6.6 out of 10, which may sound high, but remember if you take off the scope, this becomes a very good semi-auto rifle, and better than the M1E5 Garand and Type A Extended in basically all of its stats. Make sure you give any soldiers equipped with this SVD an axe melee weapon so they can charge, as the lack of bayonet is a little annoying to your movement speed. On screen now is my overall gold weapon leaderboard, where every gun on here has been reviewed on my channel in the playlist you can see on screen now. But you can also find the overall best weapons in the entire game on screen now too. Special thanks to my channel members, patrons, Twitch subs, and Discord boosters including Vertix, Kitsune, Akolo QE, and others. And press like on the dang video if you enjoyed it.